Hey, good evening, guys. Just wanted to come to you here from the house, and I saw the video earlier. I'm gonna chime in. I don't know if you guys want me to or not, but the guys earlier, I mean, great video in the car, and I enjoyed it. The problem with that was I heard the word substance about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, talking about nobody had any substance to a video. They only really talked about the quarterback matchups and Henry and Montgomery on Mike's side, but then Cook on Josh's side. And those are the only numbers I heard. So I dug a little deeper and everything else and kind of took a look at some numbers and came up with a few stats. I'm going to try to make it quick, but I got a whole lot I went through and kind of just added stuff up. I think in fantasy football that people that get hot at the right time, similar to the NCAA basketball tournament and things like that, if you get a hot team at the right time, you can beat just about anybody. Josh has been hot the majority of the year. Mike has been pretty strong as well. But here lately with Montgomery and everything else, and Mike has been putting up some numbers. So let me run through some things, and I'm just going to compare back and forth with numbers. Josh Allen, first off for Josh. I got Josh on the left side, Mike on the right side of my page, and I'm going to be reading back and forth. Josh Allen has been nothing but a stud for the last 6 games. Last 6 games, Josh Allen has 191 points, so he's averaging 32 points a week over the last 6, compared to Russell Wilson, who 4 of his last 6 have been 17 points or fewer. So 32 points on Josh Allen's side, 17 points or less for the last 6 on Mike's side. That's a plus 15 advantage, I think, for Josh when we talk about quarterback. Dalvin Cook, 119 points over his last 6 for 19.8 average. Derrick Henry on the other side, though, 137 for his last 6. So Henry gets the bump over Cook right now, 21 points per game over the last 6 compared to Cook. Looking at the matchups too, Cook is going against the second toughest defense compared to Henry, who has the 28th ranked defense. So Henry clearly has that advantage as well, but just by a few points, like I said, based on the averages. David Montgomery on Mike's side, 26.5 points over his last 4. All right, since his bye week. And evidently, Nagy decided to start giving him the football. Montgomery's averaging 26.5 over his last 4. But then when we look at Josh's side with Miles Sanders, since week 5, guys, Miles Sanders has only been over 3.5 points one time. So Miles Sanders barely getting over 13 points for one time, and that was week 14 against a tough New Orleans defense. They gave him the rock, and he had a great game. But even last week with 10 points, and Montgomery's putting up 26.5 points over his last 4. So what Josh gained with Josh Allen at quarterback, I think Mike gets back in Montgomery compared to Sanders. Diggs, going against the third toughest defense, has been 20-plus his last 6. Last time he played New England, he got 15 points. Compared to Ridley, who's been 21.6 over his last 5 since his bye. Obviously, it helps him with no Julio playing for a little while. He's put up some numbers. But those guys, the way I see it, are going to be 20-plus on one side, 21 on the other. They're kind of a push to me. Ridley's going against the second toughest defense. Diggs, the third toughest. Cole Beasley on Josh's side, still the third toughest defense. Cole Beasley, shocking people. 31-year-old man, 19 points plus over his last 5, has 96 points in his last 5 games. But he only had 4.4 his last game against New England. But on the other side, Metcalf, going against the toughest defense for a wide receiver. He's only had 1 game over 18 points in his last 6. So I hate to compare Beasley and Metcalf. It's kind of crazy. But looking at the numbers with Russell Wilson struggling, it's really not that big of a disparity. Those guys are pretty even. And then we get to Juju. Juju going against the 9th toughest defense. Juju has gotten 5, then 17, then 9, then 17, then last week 2.5. He's averaging 10 points basically over his last 5 weeks compared to DJ Moore, who's getting 17.5 his last 4 weeks. All right, had a little injury, came back after those and everything else. Had a little bye in there, excuse me. But he's getting 17.5 over his last 4 weeks, guys. So I think that Moore going against even the fourth toughest defense compared to Juju in the ninth, I think there's too many mouths to feed right now in Pittsburgh, and they really look bad. I mean, Cincinnati made them look stupid the other night, and it's Cincinnati. So I kind of give that to Moore. So looking at the overall receivers, Diggs, Ridley, kind of. I mean, I'm split on those. I hate to say that Cole Beasley might be the difference, but Cole Beasley over Metcalf right now, unless Metcalf can get one long and break it. And then I think Moore beats Juju. All right, so I kind of give that advantage over to Mike. So Josh wins quarterback. Mike so far wins running backs and wide receivers. But then we get to this tight end position. Darren Waller is Waller the baller, as I've heard people call him. Darren Waller has got 117 points in his last 5 games, guys. All right, and one of those games was a 6.3 dud. So that just goes to show you he's had 111 points basically in 4 games. He's still, with those 5, even with that one dud in there, he's averaging 23.5 points over his last 5. All right, he gets the 5th toughest defense, so that's not good. But Andrews on the other side is getting the 12th toughest defense. All right, Andrews is averaging 15.5 his last 4, but that's still almost a 10-point swing that Waller kind of gets the advantage. All right, so Andrews to Waller. Obviously, we all, I think, in unison, even Mike included, would probably give that advantage to Josh at this point. So Josh has got quarterback, tight end. Mike has got running backs and receivers. I think we give the nod. We go to kickers, and we never talk about kickers. It's fantasy football. But Younghoe Koo is averaging 10-plus for the season. Every week, as a whole, he's getting 10-plus points. But he is in KC. It is cold. It is outside. It's not in the dome there in Georgia. But Cairo Santos, Mike, I kind of laughed when somebody said that Sly had upside yesterday. I think it was Joe or somebody said that Sly had upside as a kicker. It's a kicker. But look, his last 2 weeks for Cairo Santos, 10 points, 15 points. So, 2 field goals, 4 extra points in week 14. 4 field goals, 3 extra points in week 15. So they get Jacksonville. Mitch Trubisky, of all people, putting up points for the Bears. So Cairo Santos might outdo Younghoe Koo, but they're kickers, guys. Who cares? But then we look at defense. All right, defense, and the way I broke these down was I just looked at the season and did some averaging for Josh's side with Simmons, who, by the way, is questionable, Josh, and Okwara. They basically are averaging 9.5 a week for you, compared to Mike's DLs and Armstead and Tuitt, who is also questionable, is getting Mike 9 points. So slight edge to Josh and D-line. Tyrell Adams, who's been a stud lately, and Miles Jack. Basically, the 16th ranked linebacker, 17th ranked linebacker, according to points, get Josh roughly 15.7 a week. But on Mike's side, he's got David, who's the 13th ranked linebacker, and then Singleton is tied with Jack. So they're both basically averaging the same thing. Josh gets 15.7 a week. Mike gets 15.6 a week. Linebackers, I think, are a push at this point. But Tyrell Adams, I did it for the season, but Tyrell Adams, 10-plus points his last 4 games. So if Adams comes out and gets a 10 spot, like the last 4 weeks, I think Josh kind of wins the linebacker battle. And then we look at DBs. Peppers and Simmons for Josh average roughly 13.1 a week compared to Mike's Johnson and Curl, who are getting 11.5 a week. At the same time, though, Curl over his last 7 games is getting 9.4 a week compared to, for the season, he's at 5.7. So if Curl comes out and has a solid week like that, then maybe Mike gets the DB stretch. So, guys, I broke this down just off the averages, and I added up numbers. All right, and off my little notepad, I went quarterbacks and just added up total numbers. Josh Allen, I think, gets 32. Josh's running backs get basically 33.5. His receivers get a combined 46. Waller gets a solid 20. Kicker gets 7, I think. Linebackers 9. DL 9, linebacker 16, DBs 13. I'll hold the total for the end. Mike's side, 17 for Russell Wilson, going off what he's done. I'm not giving you anything great. He's going against the toughest defense, and he's been 4 of 6 weeks, 17 points or fewer. So 17 for Russell Wilson. Running backs, though, 21 and 25 is what I'm guesstimating for 46, which gives Mike the advantage. Receivers, I'm thinking 22, 15, and 16. So that's 37, 37, 16 is 53. I think Andrews gets him 15. So Josh wins the tight end battle. Kicker, I think a 7 spot for both of them is about right. DL's 9 for each of you. Linebackers 16 for each of you. And then Mike, I think you're going to get 11 compared to Josh's 13 for DBs. So with my total, my call on the winner, and as much as I hate to say it, based on the averaging and all of these numbers, guys, that I came up with just looking at everything, and I'm trying to show you, but my phone won't turn around, so I'll just hold it up and turn it. But all that crap I did right there, I'm calling Josh will win. Josh will win this thing with a score of 176.5 to Mike's 174. So numbers, averages, hot team at the right time. Josh, 176 to 174 in a close one. That's what I've got with my my analytics, so to speak, and my next gen stats that I came up with. But just looking at averages, guys. Josh, 176 to 174. Mike, prove me wrong, please. Go Archangels. You guys have a good night. Sorry it was so long, Ed.